We are addicted to headlines. It saddens me how fixated we are on what gets written on the front page.
And obviously, it's nothing to be proud of. I mean, let's be reflective as much as possible. What do you think of transparency and integrity in our region?
We have room to grow.
What's missing? Because it's a leadership thing, and people don't think about culture the way they think about, for example, strategy.
People don't realize what it takes to build a culture. Everyone is in a hurry.
Yes.
They want things fast, quickly. Building a culture is difficult. Transforming a culture is even more difficult. It goes back to leaders. They don't have everything, all the ingredients that are necessary to really build the culture.
When I asked capital owners, they clearly said, and from here, we're extremely confident in the workforce.
Yeah.
We have zero confidence in the ecosystem. If your company is established or it receives capital in Jordan, sorry, I'm out.
Do you know why? It saddens me to say this. Look, I honestly think leadership is evolutionary. It's something that it's a formula. It's a combination of things that you might be born with right off the bat. But then you have to work on it. You have to discover. There's a bit of trial and error. So it's really a fascinating, non-ending. The position itself gives you the authority, but effectiveness, the respect, is something that you have to work hard on. You have to listen. And the best test of a true leader or effective leader is not good times, but really difficult times, is when you have to manage through a crisis, when you have to restructure, let go of people. These are the moments, the circumstances that really define what a leader is. So it's. I almost want to say it's a philosophy.
It is, to a certain degree.
It is.
Because it's a sense of being that matches the sense of doing, right? So who you are, how do you think? And I love the thing about it's not a title. It's an operating system. It's something that you do that matches your philosophy, right? How do you differentiate between these two? Because it's very difficult. I mean,
it's not only that. It's also making sure that the positive feedback that you always get from people you mentor, you lead, doesn't go to your head. And if it goes to your head, it doesn't affect your sense of how grounded you are in terms of leader. It doesn't inflate your expectations in terms of I'm a leader, so therefore I expect the following. To your question, how do I differentiate between
the title and the action? Like you said, it's okay. So let me drill down on one thing you said. The amount of yes men or women around you, the amount of people who give you positive compliments, whether it's flattery or sincere, it's very difficult to differentiate. You shouldn't have it get into your head and maintain grounded. How do you know as a leader?
Cause and effect. You always, you're bound to be affected. Your ego is a tricky SOB. It sneaks up on you. Ego is in itself something that one has to manage, to acknowledge, to understand, to characterize, and know exactly what it needs. So you have to keep it in check. Now, how do I know if it's flattery, excuse the expression, brown nosing, or sincere? You just know, with experience. I've managed hundreds, maybe I've hit 1,000, north of 1,000 people. You know, I'll tell you the moments that you know. After the fact, it's difficult to differentiate, whether Usama is giving me a sincere or just trying to get a bigger bonus or, wants to be on the good side of the boss. But it's when you reflect on experiences, it's the rear view mirror that you go, okay, so-and-so, kept on improving, acted on certain advice, improved, so ultimately reached the protege. And these personas, they give me the the largest satisfaction, that I've really acted as a mentor to someone who has become a leader. And then there are those who overnight, once you part ways for whatever reason, they act completely different, 180 degrees. So it's cases like this when you say, okay, what can I learn? Where did I err in terms of investing? Look, and one funny part, it's easy to say, from now on, I'm not going to do this or that, because this guy proved that he or she wasn't worthy of the time investment, the coaching, the mentoring. This is, in my opinion, a trap that leaders could fall into.
And it's lazy, isn't it?
It's lazy. It's overreaction, I think.
Overreaction. It's emotional, yes.
It's emotional, exactly. And it could be ego. It could be ego acting, how dare he or she. And from now on, I'm not going to trust, I'm not going to invest, I'm not going to do this or that.
And maybe even stereotype a whole group of people because of that.
Yeah. So, but the better thing to do over experience, what I've learned, is to understand, in terms of diagnosis, in terms of how do you differentiate between someone who's genuinely seeking counseling, mentorship, guidance, and so on, or giving you the flattery that. One thing I've done and I've learned from the early years, always stick to one agenda, and it's the institutional agenda, not the Omar or Usama agenda. It's, we're here to serve the common
best interest of the organization. Yes.
So this is our North Pole. This is, so anything off of that, it's either self-serving. Now, there are always personal agendas, ambitions, so on and so forth, whether at the team. There are always gossip and, second guessing the boss and politics and, why did the boss, just all sorts. I can write books about, things that go on in the corporate workplace. But at some point, you start enjoying, you start detecting right away and understanding, and then bring them back all to, we're heading that way, we need to achieve 1, 2, 3. So it's just about repeating, communication, and again, working hard to build leadership, to sustainability. One of the best moments in my career is two moments actually. Once I met with Hamid Shuman when he was interviewing me at Arab Bank, and he's like, tell me about yourself. And I said, look, I'm brought up, I started my career in the US, so I've learned, work for the institution. And self-improvement is a byproduct, a secondary goal. So the way I work is I institutionalize work, processes, whatever. So if at any given point in time, if I have to leave or I'm asked to leave, the ship sails, it won't tumble down, it won't break down, it will continue. So fast forward 5.5 years, in my exit interview, and I told him, do you remember what you asked me and what I said? Of course not. And I said, here's what you asked me and here's how I answered. And today I'm proud to say that my deputy is ready. He's taking over. The team is solid, the leadership. So I say it with a clear conscience that what I said, I've done. So I've talked the talk and I walked the walk. And this, at the end of the day, gave me a great sense of satisfaction, accomplishment, is that it's not about raising the bar, it's about standards, really. I've defined a standard, and I've implemented it.
It's funny when you said raising the bar, because it's, in my opinion, it's quote unquote sad in the professional term that you say raising the bar to reach a standard. It's called a standard for a reason.
True.
If raising the bar is to reach a standard, then something is fundamentally wrong in the organization or in the workforce, generally speaking, right?
I agree. There are several fundamental flaws in our operating models. I see a lot of people take shortcuts, a lot of people acting on the wrong impulses or thinking, if I do the, simplex, not complex.
Yes.
And simplex isn't always what's best Sometimes they're effective, they're quick, they prove right, but it's never
an instant gratification, isn't it?
And it's hardly sustainable.
Yes.
This is the key. Simply they become dependent on people. So and it depends. We are all to some extent self-serving.
Yes.
But then
you can't help but being biased to yourself. I mean, this is
exactly.
But as long as you're aware of it.
But at what price? So again, on this example, if you decide to move on, why would you not care? Why would you not leave a legacy in saying, this is, I don't mean to sound idealistic, but it's truly gratifying. And you can achieve both. I mean, it doesn't have to be one over the other.
It's not mutually exclusive. You can actually, and that, by the way, not most, I would even argue all truly successful people have that mindset and they act on it. It's just that I think it's harder said than done because it's not as, how do I say it, as behavioral or not behavioral, let's put it that way. So let me shift quickly into leadership and culture, because everything you mentioned is about a leader who's building a culture.
Mm-hmm.
And leader and culture are two faces of the same coin. So if you're a leader who has an element of institutionalizing processes, making sure that you have systems, making sure that you have operating environments that allows people to really thrive without having that dependency on individuals or people, like you said, that creates a culture of people actually wanting to do that. So the fact that that is not as clear to people as it should be, and therefore businesses are not sustainable as it should be, or even growing as it should be, what's missing in your opinion? I mean, because it's a leadership thing and people don't think about culture the way they think about, for example, strategy. So every year, leaders, they have the strategy sessions. They go to a resort or strategy retreats. They put the goals, the KPIs, the measures, the monitoring, Yeah. Come talk about culture. And then you bring this trainer who does, I don't know, can-do attitude and all of these tick boxes, the Anglo-Saxon sort of trainings. And then people go back to their own gossiping and backbiting and brown nosing or whatever. So what's missing, in your opinion?
The wrong approach, the wrong recipe, shortcuts. People don't realize what it takes to build a culture. It doesn't take one person. It's DNA, if I can just describe it in 3 letters. It's the fabric of the organization, and believe me, it's easier to build, a greenfield sort of culture than to change a culture. Changing a culture takes a lot of effort. It takes, the one thing I would say, consistency. You want to make sure that all the leadership team is consistent. Because one bad apple may derail the whole effort. So you have to keep at it. It takes a group effort. You're right. It's easier said than done. One thing, the more I think about it, lately I've sent, maybe it's the age, the career, the
gray hair.
The gray hair. Everyone is in a hurry. Everyone is in a hurry.
Yes.
They want things fast, quickly. Yet there's so much time that is wasted in areas where, why are you investing time or not acting in an efficient manner? But everyone wants to build a culture quickly. People sometimes, again, shortcuts. They think building culture is about having, the vision, mission, statement. This is who we are. Come on, let's get it
installed next to water dispensers and in elevators, and
definitely, and giveaways and things.
Right.
No, it's not that. Building a culture is difficult. Transforming a culture is even more difficult. And maintaining it over decades is even. How many companies in this part of the world have maintained over? Again, I've worked in 70, 80-year-old institution. It's a wonderful feeling to be part of such an old, prestigious organization, and then young, up and coming that again faced a financial crisis, that rude awakening, and you have to navigate through it.
Yes.
So I don't know. It goes back to maybe the leaders who are defining, building the culture. They don't have everything, all the ingredients that are necessary to really build the culture. Let alone the leadership team.
Yes,
so
yes.
If
exactly.
the captain is doesn't understand what true leadership, or the captain, and I see this also, you have leaders who say we want to build the culture, I want to maintain, so on and so forth, but the operating model is completely different. They are there to please their bosses.
Yes,
whether it's the chairpersons or the CEO or whatever. But then, okay, so it's a chain. It's not one link. It's not communication. It's a serious undertaking when you say I want to build a culture.
It's really an ecosystem of a complex set of variables that keep on moving every day. And I always think of an organization in terms of strategy and culture. And strategy is easy to define because you can write it down, you can point at it literally, you can say, okay, this is how much, 20%, year on year, on month on month, we need to expand to this area. So it's very much measurable in the most quantitative way. But look at culture, like you said, it's behaviors. And behaviors touches egos, and egos touch character. And people usually defend. And what I said earlier is leadership and culture are two faces of the same coin. If someone wants to say that, the culture of this organization is so and so, naturally it will touch the ego and the character of the leader, because the leader knows that the culture is the mirror of their behavior. You mentioned something very important, which is you say something, but then you do something else. And people see through it.
Of course.
People see through it.
People see through it, and it goes way beyond. I mean, it goes to not the onboarding, to the recruitment, to the screening, to the people you bring on board, and how you nurture leaders, and how you identify leaders, and how you tell and manage others, sorry, you're not a leader, and how you make sure that this person is still engaged. Because these are situations where sometimes they're quite tricky. If you have two people and they're both competing for a leadership position, and they both think,
I deserve it.
Right. And one of them, doesn't. How do you manage the landing? How do you make sure that this person doesn't crash and doesn't say unfair, this and that? And goes back to accepting, performing, and acting in the best interest. So it's quite delicate, and so many touch points that require a broad, comprehensive, and again consistent approach. Let alone if there are I'm going to say bad practices of saying one thing and then acting completely different.
Do you have a story of this type of bad acting?
Bad acting as in someone saying something, and I have stories. I have lots of stories, as you may have read. Bad acting.
Like I'll tell you, for example, I mean, and this is how my philosophy or lens in seeing the world. And I know that it's not as optimal as it should be. We're not saints and angels. But for example, the moment I look at someone, I don't care how old they are. I don't care where they're from. If they're not fit, I judge. Because that is a metric that you cannot cheat. Discipline and consistency. Like, I remember first time you came here, I asked you, can you do pull-ups? And you actually did pull-ups. And that, I'm sure you did pull-ups before. You can't just wake up one day and all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm going to start doing pull-ups, and then you're able to do pull-ups. But you were able, and all hats off, all respect in your, with your age. People, 25-year-olds walked into this office, couldn't do a single pull-up. Now, to me, I judge. Now, I don't judge based on how do I say it, elitist sort of looking at people. It's a class system in my mind. it's an elitist system in my mind. You're here. You can transit to that or transition to that class. So it's not sort of an ethnic or some sort of a skin color, but it's actually based on discipline, consistency, and merit. And in my mind, if we apply that on the in the workforce, not the fitness, although the fitness as well as part of it, but also everything else, things that you cannot cheat by talking your way through it, by charismatically being able to explain. Because people, this is where it becomes unfair. Because some people are charismatic by nature.
Right.
They're able to put thoughts into words in the most convincing way. To me, that's dangerous. Because how do I know, right? But then other things that should be part of the onboarding, like you said, and selection process that actually shows discipline outside of asking other people, which is fine, or even show me what you've done before. So something else, what could be that thing that is similar to give me a pull-up, for example, or give me a push-up or something that shows that you've never, for sure you've done a couple before.
Okay, two things.
Right.
I like where you're taking this. Again, some people talk the talk and some people walk the walk. It's up to you as an individual which path you want to choose. If some might put on a show and that show resonates with, unfortunately, nowadays, I'm going to do a sample and it resonates with, surprisingly, a majority of people. But there are people like you who are the minority who say it's more hot air. The fact that it's gaining momentum, and again, I go back to, we want to repeat the shortcuts. People are in a hurry.
Yes.
People want, I should learn how to articulate and show off. I should wear this brand. I should I should borrow to drive a car, that, so on and so forth, because that projects the image of a successful, and that will get me, and I should network and rub elbows with the best and the best. You know the formula I'm talking about.
Yes, pay for 30 under 30 or 40 under 40.
And look, it might work. And it might encourage others to replicate and do the same thing.
Unfortunately.
But to me, two wrongs don't make a right. It might be a right for someone, set of people, certain, but to me, it's about principles, and it's about reflecting when you look back inwards. What do you see? What do you want? It's when you go to bed and how do you feel?
Yes.
Are you content? The other part, which is the more interesting, I'm a fan of, I read a lot of psychology books and self-improvements, and I've read lots. One of the books I've really enjoyed is Atomic Habits.
Of course, yeah.
And again, nothing comes easy. So whether it's pull-ups or success or credentials, or you have to work hard at building the discipline, defining the standards, improving day by day. So again, the pull-ups came as a result of consistency.
Discipline, right?
Discipline.
I think the pull-ups as a metaphor comes from really doing the uninteresting, boring, anticlimactic, really hard work for a prolonged period of time, especially when you don't want to do it, right? This is where the pull-ups come. And this is why I'm not a big fan of, let's say, certificates, because you can buy your way through certificates, exams, you can buy your way, that dot in time of, I have this or I have that. Okay, fine. It's some sort of a screening process to get you to kind of come through the noise, the signal within the noise. But it's not it. Like you said, it's not that cover magazine that you bought for $199 to be on whatever magazine cover and then put it on your LinkedIn for a couple of hundred likes.
I know.
That's not it. Look, I think you said something very profound now, is that, okay, in its own right, that's not wrong. Because, yeah, it might get you somewhere, but it's not wrong. If that is only the artifact of really a mountain, that glacier, that sort of iceberg of things that you've done for a long period of time on your own, If that is it, then of course, more power to you, and that's how it's supposed to be. But if you're going through the shortcut to only do that, how does that, and again, I'm not judging the individuals. And this is where I want to, I think, now kind of segue to kind of the larger region, because we talked about the leaders, we talked about the organizations and the culture. Now let's talk about the wider region. Now, I have a few numbers that I literally just made sure that I kind of get this morning just to see your thoughts about them, right? So I'm comparing the United Arab Emirates just as one beacon in our region, very successful country economically and professionally, to Singapore, which is also from the Asian region that is also successful. And the comparison is because of the kind of the kind of how do I say the environments and the fundamentals the same. UAE manages an AUM, asset under management, of about $2.94 trillion. Singapore is almost less than half of that, 1.1 trillion asset under management. The GDP is almost comparable, 552 billion versus 547 billion in Singapore. The population here is double. So here is 12 million, in Singapore is 6 million. Now, let's talk about the events and the performative element. Here in the UAE, last year, they had over 500 global business events. In Singapore, it's 250 business events. Okay, so those are the kind of numbers.
Headlines, right.
Now, let's talk about the results. And I really kind of, from a results perspective, I look up at capital deployment, because this, I mean, it's the hardest thing to do, right?
Indeed.
So let's talk about VC specifically, just to kind of be very kind of laser sharp and surgically accurate. In the UAE, there has been 231 VC deals. In Singapore, 274 VC deals. Comparable still.
Yeah.
Comparable. However, this is where it gets darker. In the UAE, they attracted 1.5 billion VC raised in dollar, the total. In Singapore is 3.1 billion, which makes and the average deal size about 6.8 million in UAE versus 14 million in Singapore. Now, if you look at it from that perspective, so double the amount of capital raised, higher VC deals, double or more the deal size. What does that tell you? I mean, not the cause, obviously no one knows exactly why this happened, but from your perspective, what do these numbers tell you about Singapore versus the United Arab Emirates as two examples from our region?
Look, the first thing that jumps at me, efficiency. They're far more efficient when it comes to this metric. They have something, they do something better than the UAE. So you have to dissect, you have to zoom in and identify what it is. It could be geography, it could be competition. I mean, the competitive landscape in their neck of the woods versus this part of the world. I don't know if the fact that it's being run as a company and it has a CEO and so on and so forth has a factor. But I think UAE has done quite well when it comes to the operating model, if you like.
Yes.
So it's definitely a model to follow, to adopt, to study, and drill down as to why they've been far more successful. And then the next step, how can we compete and go beyond what they were able to accomplish? Just a quick observation.
Yeah.
In this part of the world, I think I'm going to use the word jealousy. There's more jealousy. Maybe in Singapore, I mean, let's look at the neighborhood. You've got Malaysia, I think.
Yeah, Malaysia.
KL, that's the closest competitor. And then, mainland China,
of course,
which is a completely different.
That's a completely different ballgame.
And short of that, there's not a whole lot of players that do compete with
rise up to that level.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
But the flip side of it, and look at our neighborhood. You have a lot of ambitious young competitors
Yes.
that want to replicate, want to raise, and the VC scene is sexy, attractive,
catches headlines.
headlines, exotic, yes, this and that, and we are addicted to headlines. It saddens me how fixated we are on what gets written on the front page. X billion, X whatever. We're just, and it goes back to why are we so fixated? Is it because this is ego serving, or does it please the master, or we're very much, or is it the quick win, or is it? I always think, does this headline circle back to reflecting positively on me, which then gives me a sense of security, whether with higher powers or my boss and so on, and so much more on the ecosystem. And you and I have spoken about exits.
Yes.
This is one metric that I'm interested in. Let's benchmark and compare exits. How many have? Okay, raising is great, but let's look at the number of exits and successful ventures that were incubated or funded and really became a global or international company.
Which is in our region. I mean, obviously, it's nothing to be proud of. I mean, let's be reflective as much as possible. However, it's a pipeline of people start, and then you reach the end, and then by the end, you design exits, you design at an ecosystem level. So those people, by the time they reach, they have an exit path that then entices more money to come in, and so on and so forth.
No, for sure. But so are you saying it's a question of timing?
I think what I'm trying to say here is it's a question of mandates. It's a question of ecosystem design that really looks at the full pipeline. From the moment ideas are being incubated, ideas are being supported and funded, all the way to ideas being adopted and actually built and absorbed in the workforce, in the professional domain, all the way to exiting. So that whole thing is where it becomes really interesting. And obviously, it's unfair to ask a startup founder or a company to look at the full picture, because every time I speak to a founder, he tells me, or even a capital allocator or owner, he tells me, Usama, I don't have exit here. I'm like, why is that? There's no shortage of capital. There's no shortage of population. There's no shortage of capital markets.
Absolutely.
So I don't understand. I mean, to me, it's math, right? It's math. It's a matter of putting 1 + 1 = 2. I'm not going to say 1 + 1 = 20 or whatever, this kind of philosophical. No, 1 + 1 = 2. So when you have the population, when you have the capital, obviously, when you have all of this, and again, the way I think about it is every single large player in the world is coming to our region.
If I may to add, and there are no shortages of problems to solve for.
Thank you. Like, there's no shortage of problem, there's no shortage of talent, and there's no shortage of capital. So in my mind, the way I think of it is we have all the ingredients, but we're not able to make that beautiful dish. And that's an ecosystem mandate. That's a mandate problem. And this mandate is obviously much bigger than the founders, much bigger than maybe it's down the alley of capital allocators and capital owners. What do you think?
That could be. It could be. Definitely not the founders. Let's do it by elimination. It's not the founders. It's not the fundamentals, the ingredients. Capital, I think partly guilty because capital, but look, capital, why would capital care about the ecosystem?
That is the question. I love that. Why? Why should they or shouldn't they?
Okay, let's start with the why shouldn't they?
Yes.
Capital is after, it's black or white.
Yes.
It's vanilla. It's ROI, ROE, ROA.
The MOIC, all of those IRR, all of that.
That's what I'm after.
True.
Multiples
A
model, and again, whether it's the model that sprinkle over so many, or the private equity, or whatever the case may be. The capital, what drives capital are the returns at the end of the day.
Yes.
So it's a straightforward formula. So that's why.
Isn't that so? Is it, in my mind, isn't that an incentive for capital to actually be interested in calibrating and optimizing and sort of playing with those levers that they have access to, obviously at their level, to achieve those numbers?
Look, I want to even take it to a higher level of saying part of ensuring that capital is preserved and grown and is to make sure there's an ecosystem that caters to the allocation strategy. But then how expensive is that for capital? Are there enough incentives for capital owners to really go down that route, as opposed to take the more simplistic, VC, I'm going to invest in X number of companies and I know one of them is bound to whatever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look for incentives. And to answer the question, whose responsibility is it to make sure that the ecosystem is conducive to, comparable to the Singaporean model and is balanced?
Or the Silicon Valley,
or the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So, I'm not a reductionist. it's not a cause and effect. It's not just one entity. But I want to kind of zoom in and focus on the capital allocators and capital owners, simply because they have the authority, they have the power, they have the resources, and obviously they have the visibility over things that most others, and they are the few. It's not like it's typically a pyramid. So I just read a report the other day that worldwide you have only 7,000 or 9,000 active VCs worldwide. In the region here, probably it's in the hundreds. So, and they convene, and I know they convened a few weeks back or last week, and what do they talk about? I'm genuinely wanting to have to see and actually challenge in the most no fluff way. What are you talking about exactly? And it should be what you said: multiples, returns, timeframes, and models that can stand the scrutiny of sensitivity testing and scenario analysis. Okay, good. Do we have problems? Of course we do. Do we have population that requires these problems to be solved? Yes, we do. Do we have talent so they can design solutions for these problems? Yes, we do. Do we have operating systems or mandates, or let's say ecosystems that can provide safety, security, all of that? Yes, we do. Okay. What can we do as capital allocators to incentivize? Because incentive drives behavior.
Absolutely.
And the best incentive is obviously reward.
Yeah.
And reward is in capital or monetary. What do you do? And how do you design it in a think tank? Look at, the source. It starts with talent. The amount of people that I know that are super extremely talented, but they lack resources. And by the way, a resource can be actually being answered to. You have no idea. Nobody's getting, the ghosting, the kind of,
right.
So I'm not talking about just throwing and spraying capital or money or cash. Just listen to the people and don't just get bogged down by the 1,000 or 2,000 other noisy.
Look, I love that question. And it got me thinking. I'll tell you what capital can do. Can use capital to influence some of the key stakeholders. In this particular case, make sure that, again, I'm not talking about just the think tanks, but governments. Governments need to be incentivized and pressured. So if I'm a capital owner, if I'm a bank, if I'm a FI, whatever the case may be, I want to make sure that there is a robust ecosystem. I need to make sure that my counterparts at the sovereign level understand what's at stake, not just from a job creation and the usual.
Yes.
No, it's far more than that. And they understand the incentive scheme that is required to build this pipeline, not just the early on in saying technology companies are exempt from income tax. And this is too simplex.
Very simplex. Yeah.
This doesn't cut it. They need, so if I'm a capital owner, I will say, look, here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to invest in your resources, the civil servant, in educating them, in raising their awareness as to what it takes to build and the benefits. So I'm going to subsidize or sponsor, whatever the case may be.
Yes.
But here's what I need from you. I need you to understand and step up to make sure that we have a resilient, robust model, chain, pipeline, journey, call it whatever, that matches this, and that. We're not, recreating. And then don't give me the, unfortunately, cliche, it works there, it doesn't work here because we,
whatever,
certain
culture.
Color, certain behavior,
I heard
we can't. I'm sorry, I never accept that telling me it doesn't work. Yeah, it works. It worked in Singapore. I mean, it worked beautifully in Singapore.
It's a dot on a map that has a demographic that I could never even, when I visited there, I was surprised how every sign has 4 languages, has the English and then the 3 native languages in every sign. And I'm like, why is that? And when I dug deep, it's actually, there's no natives. It's just people coming from all of the surrounding areas, the Malay, the Chinese and the Indians coming together, and they made that.
You know what impressed me most when I visited? I used to go there for business. They count their trees every year. They do an inventory.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't be surprised.
Talk about
how efficiency.
Talk about asset management.
Talk about asset management, exactly.
Talk
about accounting, transparency. Yeah. What do you think of transparency and integrity in our region?
We have room to grow. Still early. We're still young. We have ways to go. I often see one of 2 models. I'm a subscriber of the following. Others have done it. Let's learn.
Yes.
And
I love that. Let's learn, not let's copy and paste.
Let's learn.
Yes.
Adapt if it needs to be adapted, and then adopt.
Yes.
There's no need to reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
And then there's the other model that says, no, we can do it better. We haven't done something close to it. How could you be so confident that we can do it better?
We're less than 1% of the global VC.
But you know why? Because it goes back to this, okay, I'm excited. I guess energy management, emotions. I get excited. I believe, yes, I can. Yes, we are. Okay, great. This is only one element of that recipe you were talking about. It's not the entire recipe. It's not enough for you to say, you know what, they've done it, I'm going to do it even better. What gives you the confidence or the conviction that you can do it better, given that you've never done something similar or close thereto? Is it the resources? Great. But are you able and capable of managing the resources? Are the people, experienced enough to do this and that? So I think we, in this part of the world, we're emotional. We're social beasts. We're emotional. I love you, you love me, habibi.
Yeah.
And we lose sight of the context in which we deploy this. We sometimes, get over enthused, overexcited, and let it sneak to a level where it gets to our heads and thinking, we can accomplish certain things either in a shorter period of time or things that again, pull-ups. Someone who's never done pull-ups. Yes, I can.
Yes, you can, but probably in a year's time.
But here's what you need to do.
Yes, to be able and here's what you need to do consistently, deliberately, with plan every day. Because if you don't do it properly, you'll injure yourself as well.
And funny story. People in my age bracket, they get excited. I know a colleague of mine, they get excited over playing paddle, for example. And they just go in and then guess what? Injury.
Yes.
what do you expect?
What do you expect?
You're no longer 20 or 25. You lose sight of that. But it's that excitement, the energy, the fire that went beyond reason, and it was deployed in an irrational way.
Yes, because of the emotions and because of the ego and probably because of the competition and the kind of...
Look, because there was an absence of consciousness.
Yes, awareness, yes.
Awareness of, okay, great, I'm excited, but let's settle down. Let's just channel it. Let's manage it. Let's size it.
Let's be reasonable about it.
Let's benchmark. Yes. Let's see. Let's learn. You haven't learned. You can't learn a language or a discipline or in 1/10, 100th the time that it normally requires. Yes, you can do it in 10%, 15% less here and there, maybe at a lower cost, but not double and triple.
Yes. So let's zoom down, because we're still talking about the capital owners and allocators. So let's zoom down to family offices in our region, from the wider region, right? Whether it's Jordan, GCC, Egypt, this block of land, right? Let's look at those, and let's look at them in the context of, like you said, influencing governments. So I can't help but think about the PPP model, right? Mm-hmm. So public-private partnerships. And many times I hear, and I'm not an expert on this in this domain, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Many tell me that we're not mature enough to manage PPP from not just planning, but also execution and seeing it through. Lots of MOUs that just gets shelved, lots of announcements and PR that just gets kind of in a limbo forever. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, lots of hope that is building all of those sort of people that just gets all the energy, but then they go knock on the doors that actually announced, nothing happens. What's your experience on this between family, PPP, and maturity?
Okay, let's take them one at a time. Right. You want to start with the PPP or the family offices?
Which one do you feel is more important? So PPP is a policy that probably needs to be governed, and there's compliance, and there's sort of guardrails or guidelines, or no?
Sure. The harder one is the PPP.
Right.
Family offices are the easier. It's just like capital.
Right.
They vary in terms of maturity, but their objective is clear. Preservation of wealth. Legacy, perhaps.
Community development, probably contribution, is it? Especially in our region, relative to other parts of the world. And that's what I want to kind of drill down, because people always use the Anglo-Saxon sort of Western models here. I don't think it applies for one reason. Over there, it's a pure capitalist with the capital C model, which is cutthroat. Here, I've been with really capital owners from family offices that during COVID, they actually cared about who has family, who doesn't have a family. Right. And they actually went out of their way to go through the lists themselves. They didn't have to, but they have that sort of moral conscience that made them feel about the people, especially from their own, but also generally speaking. And that's a model that I don't think exists anywhere else in the world in this magnitude. So I like to put that into the perspective and the context of our discussion.
Of course. And I agree totally. In fact, I see it as a competitive advantage.
Yes, thank you.
It's the social responsibility in the true sense of
in the true sense, not CSR.
Not CSR, in the true sense. It's
the most meaningful way.
A simpler version, or perhaps another attribute, is the family name. Protecting, maintaining, and ensuring that the family name lives on beyond the individual. So this is beautiful. This is an intangible, or perhaps tangible, attribute that needs to be capitalized on as a competitive advantage. Is it or is it not? Now, when it comes to the context of leveraging this, when you talk about government, the simplex building mosques and building, this is simple. Schools and sponsoring.
Exactly,
yes.
Which is no shortage of that. There's lots of that, which is commendable.
Charitable organization, this is all done. But then from a community, and I don't think there's enough being done from a job creation, from the socio-economical, social, yeah, but then I don't know, to be honest.
I think my interaction with all of those sort of capital owners, especially from the family offices, there's an element of, like you said, simplistic way or simplistic view of the VC / capital allocation practice when it comes to this domain. Because PE is slightly different and easier because you have a machine that's working, you have lawyers, you have CFOs, you have all of those sort of operating systems that is already able to transparently being audited. You can pour money into it and you can get something at the end of the from the other side. When it comes to VC, no, it's another element. It's a different beast, which is far more complicated simply because it requires a different set of skills and talents that usually those big guys don't have.
Right.
And to have it, it's an ecosystem. So you need the education first. So those talented coders, engineers, they need to understand business, they need to understand finance, they need to understand customer acquisition, they need to understand talent management and acquisition. So it's kind of a 360 view from the beginning. They don't have that. So what do we do about it? So it's far before the allocation of the capital to those two young chaps. It's far before that. So the thinking about it is not just, okay, within my family office, I'm going to have a VC, or let's say an investment arm that has a VC sector that then scans the market, opens a cohort. I don't know, I'm going to receive, 25 every few years. And then hopefully I'll get 2 that will kick in the power law.
Exactly.
It's not that. There's something fundamentally missing really much earlier than this at an education level. But the problem is, like you said, this is not an investment that you can put on a model from an ROI perspective because you're spending somewhere else. And in my mind, since you're doing it on mosques, since you're doing it on charity,
why not? Yeah.
Why not do it here as well? But that's difficult because it's not just, hire a contractor and build a mosque. There's a system that needs to be built here. There's an operating system, actually.
True. And maybe because the credits aren't as visible. In the mosque case or any religious. I believe, brownie points are being, credits. So I'm going to do it without question. But when it comes to the other elements, is that what's missing?
Too diluted for me to shine and say,
is it? And
we can solve it out. We can solve
it goes back to why not leverage your influence with policymakers to say, let's have a conversation around this. We need to do something because the other party, and again, we'll move to the PPP. Job creation. Okay, but how effective have they been? How many? It saddens me. The MOUs. Again, it goes back to the front page headline syndrome. Whenever I read MOU, I was like, oh God, believe me, I've given advice to politicians who were looking for the same, what do you have to share in terms of announcements? And I said, why are you after the announcements? Are you after the actual deal and what it'll make, or are you after the MOU, which could last a day or 2 or whatever and gives you a couple of credits, but then it'll disappear just like.
We became immune to it. I mean, I think we people started. I mean, I know capital owners now are not in, neither MOUs or even LOIs or whatever it is that is not actionable. I mean, fine, okay, now you announce that you are having this understanding of doing XYZ. Okay. How do you, and obviously there's nothing fundamentally or structurally wrong with MOUs. Obviously it's a good way to kind of start something, but then follow through. And that following through has to be measured through outcomes. And my outcome is capital allocation. And obviously that's the first milestone. But also, like I said, it goes all the way to exit.
Hearing you out, one thing that I've also noticed that is overly concentrated or concentrated beyond its fair share in our part of the world is one thing. You want to guess what it is? Trust.
Okay.
We allocate a lot to trust when it comes to individuals and when it comes to decision makers. So, you know, I know Usama, I trust Usama, so I'm going to put Usama in this seat position for him to influence. And for you to maintain that trust, you need to work hard, not on a long term, but ensure that, you know, you're delivering, you're bringing that MOU, and for me to tell you, attaboy, Usama, you're doing a good job. And I think we need to move away from trust and closer to basis of merits. Hiring for merits. We don't do enough of this in this part of the world, unfortunately. So again, back to family offices, I think there's a lot more that can be done, particularly in the space of PPPs. And when it comes to the PPPs, whether or not that their work, look, in infrastructure, I think we've come a long ways. But in terms of FDIs, in terms of VCs, it varies from one country, one city to another. There's certainly appetite, but we've yet to master. I've gone through negotiating agreements, and they take a long, long time. And time is investment for the private sector to go through, you know, a deal. We still have ways to go in terms of understanding what the private sector needs, expects, is driven by, and we need to reciprocate without really compromising on the end game from a public sector perspective. So I think a lot can be done when it comes to outsourcing, just breaking down, doing away with prevailing legacy models of managing this or that, and just privatize. I'm a fan of privatization. I think it works beautifully if done right.
If done right, that's the key. And the only way it can be done right is if you actually plan it through a proper operating model that then can stand the scrutiny of audit and transparency. And it has to be, I mean, the way I design, for example, ecosystems, you must have 3 layers of integrity by design. The first one is committees, and not the traditional ones. No. One that has something, and I always design it based on that, which is implementation protocol. So a decision have an SLA, a response and a confirmation has an SLA, so you can't have a limbo. There's a clear agenda, there's templates and everything. So this is one. So no one person would be able to kind of have that leverage. And even if that, there is transparency by design. So all databases, all dashboards, everything has to be done and in a way that cannot be tampered with. And the third one, which is the most important one in my opinion, is having a complaints and grievance channel that transcends everything and goes to a higher power and authority, that then every single communication has that, and it has to be monitored with clear KPI, and all of those 3 has completely separate teams that manages them from the grounds up, that cannot be thought of. Like, it's not something that is subjective to my view, you said, I said. So if you have these 3 layers, the committees that has a implementation protocol, execution protocol that is clear cut. It's not just because I'm busy or I'm traveling, or no, you have to convene at this time, and by this time the decision has to come by this time, like clear. You need to have that element of transparency. Everything has to have KPIs that is recorded in proper databases. Like when I say databases, in the IT database, the schemas, the private keys, everything, and how is it connected, and tamper proof and timestamped. And the third is the grievance and complaints channel, where it has to be communicated with every single communication to all stakeholders and shareholders, and it has to bypass everything to whoever is at the very top, the sponsor, the person who actually has a true vested interest beyond the performance and the theatricals of what everybody else aspires to. So in my opinion, and this is again too theoretical for me, obviously you're in a better position to judge models like this. If we apply these 3 at anything, whether it's PPP, whether it's at policy execution, whether at ecosystem building. Do you think that this is a good model that is practically achievable in your opinion?
I do. I do, and I would add, from a design, I love it. Very clean, very effective. It's got the, your ombudsman, it's got the governance, it's got the checks and balances, the transparency, the traceability, and so on and so forth. So really beautiful. Now, here's what I would add to it. From a practical standpoint, how long would it take for it to be implemented, which is the easier question or part of the question. And then the harder one is, how long would it take for it to bear fruits, for it to reach stable state? Because implementing such a change requires time. Again, change management 101. Of
course.
Who moved my cheese? Including something that I often see, the sponsors, okay, the decision, forget the change at the lower levels of implementation, managing, and so on and so forth, administrating. That's easy.
That's the easiest part, yeah.
But if I am a decision maker, if I sit at the top of the pyramid, I want to make sure to give this a fair chance, because if I've been given so many different models to implement before, I need to be conscious of my legacy frustration. So I'm not, and this one should be given an equal opportunity for it to survive and to succeed. So don't pull the plug prematurely. And this sometimes happens because, I've seen this, done that. It's sort of like broad brush prejudgment.
Yes.
Based on past experiences. So there's a reset button that we need to use whenever we want to try something new. And there's a fine balance between, okay, there's been pain, hard lessons. Okay, let me just, again, goes back to learning. Let me focus on the key takeaways of how can I make sure the next time around, or the next time around, or the next time around, chances of success are higher, not pulling the plug or getting frustrated. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the deeper end of change management, starting with thyself.
I couldn't help while you're talking, remember all the projects, especially at a national level, that I'm working with in our region. And if you'd ask me what could stop such quote unquote rational, logical, because this is not me, creating anything from scratch. So obviously, this is how a rational model should look like, at least at a base level. What's stopping it? It's exactly that. It's not going to happen. Okay, good. What assumption are you basing that judgment on? Oh, we've done it before. Good. Okay, you've done it before. That means we have data. That's good. Now, whether it's good, whether it's failure or success, it's irrelevant. We have data that we can learn from. We're not immature. Because one thing I keep on hearing from capital allocators, especially at an investment level, when I ask them about why are we lagging behind? Let's say in innovation, in the innovation index, right? The global innovation index, the GII from the United Nations. The best country is the UAE, and that's 32. And it's been 32, oscillating between 32 and 35 for the past 10 years, right? Singapore, again, is number 5.3.
Wow.
What gives? And everybody's like, oh, the maturity of the market, we're still young. No, we're not. Singapore is also young. We're almost the same age.
And you've been stuck in the young for quite some time now.
You're a teenage adult, man or woman that is just, kind of still in your shorts and flip-flops.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So, I like to confront things rationally, right?
Exactly.
So it's always about, we can't do it. So, okay, what's the assumption? The assumption is, and it always goes back to, we as people, our culture, people will not allow it.
That's a shortcut.
It's a shortcut. And I'm like, okay, fine, great. Let's take that and test it. Because as someone who respects and tries a student of academia, we don't just base our conclusions or results on assumptions. We don't. We have to go and test it. And that's a good problem. We start, okay, fine. So you're saying, Mr. Capital Owner, Mr. Decision Maker, that it will not work because our people do not accept XYZ. Great. Then we have the people, the sample size, and we have the thing we need to test, XYZ. Let's put them together and study it. Because, like you said, change management 101, if this generation wouldn't accept it, great. Then let's work 10 years from now and train our next generation.
2 thoughts on this. Show me the data that says our population, our demographics won't accept it.
You can say that. I can't say that. No, it's way above my pay grade.
So that's one. Secondly, are there case studies where similar thing, culturally it was repelling, not accepted, and then second time or the same time or by rhetoric, it worked? Do we have data on that as well? Have we done the homework? But again, unfortunately, lazy people are lazy, let alone public servants, let alone politicians, okay, I'm juggling so many things. I'm under pressure to make changes, show impact. Frustration is mounting, particularly at the leadership in some countries in terms of things are or are not moving. So one thing that I would never compromise is improving year on year, time over time. If you fail, children learn how to walk by falling and then getting up and then falling and then waiting until they perfect.
So failure is a good thing.
Of course.
So when you say that something failed, to me, I get excited. Okay, show me the data. But if you don't even have the data, or you think it failed, or it failed because whatever, it's your fault and you don't want to expose yourself because and the problem is the higher the authority, the more they're able and capable of hiding that because of their own power and the dynamics behind it. And that's...
Definitely. And we live in an age, I was reading an article about AI and how fast the evolution is. We're talking about from version to version,
literally month to month,
to month,
week to week.
The recent, the Claude, and it's mind-boggling of how fast. And I don't think people are realizing what's happening in terms of a paradigm shift.
Yes,
it's really to me this is an opportunity for you to just break down whatever de facto model you're used to. Break out of your comfort zone.
It's an excuse, right? Just say, you know what? Yeah, with this, you know what? Now I can try again. You know what I mean? Like sometimes things don't change unless something dramatic happens, and then they say, you know what? Let's try now. There was lots of resistance before because of ego, because of whatever bad decisions that doesn't want to be exposed, and now you have an excuse to say, oh, you know what? Let's try it again, because people will forget the past, and now that's the cause, and they can't associate the cause and effect with that. And this is where I think the hope that I have, and I want to kind of double down on one thing, which is academia in our region, and especially I would dare to say Jordan, because Jordan is one of the highest talented per capita, I would say even skilled production of labor or skilled labor in our region. And it's not my word, don't take my word for it. I was actually sitting with a large capital owner from Far East, from Singapore. And when I told him I'm doing a project in Jordan, he got super excited. He said, Usama, if what you're saying, I showed him the architecture and the model. And he said, Usama, once this and this and that happens, let me know, I'm happy to pitch in. Because, and this is his words, not mine. He said, because every time someone comes to me and tells me because he's at a PE level, so he does deals at PE, not VC. He said, I don't trust VC because it's too malleable still, too soft, that it can be affected by the ecosystem.
Right.
At a PA level, you've crossed that line and now I can talk with you. But if you have most of your labors or your development and engineering in Jordan, usually to me, that's a good diligence point. And I'm like, why do you say that? It's like, because Jordanians are known for being hardworking, intelligent, highly skilled people. And I say, yes. He said, of course, Jordanian, Egyptians, and he mentioned a couple of countries here. And he said, but Jordan is even better because it's kind of small. So the concentration is higher, right? And I said, okay. Another person who's a CEO of a multi-billion public company here, when I told him, he's not from Jordan. When I told him about the project in Jordan, he said, I'm not surprised. I said, why? He said, in my company, when we opened our R&D, I have 250 to 300 engineers and developers in Jordan right now. And he said, no one knows about it because I don't want to tell people about it. But the productivity that they have been giving us for the past decade or so is out of this world. And we tried multiple countries and we landed in Jordan.
Finish your thought.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. So when you take all of that and then you question, you say, what is the role of academia? Because all of that started from academia, right? So that's a natural result of something really good at an educational level. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer that it doesn't go beyond education. Of course, there's the security, there's the food, there's the safety, there's the shelter, all of that. But let's say that is there. You have education as the kind of floor. If you have that set, strong foundations, nothing else should stop you or could stop you.
It's definitely a foundational layer that sets the path for something much bigger. And you can't do without it. I agree. But something it's not enough, and I'll tell you why. I think there's more to it. I think there's, the work ethics part that.
Yes, as a cultural.
As a culture.
Yes.
That comes right out of the box, if you like.
Yes.
Why? I don't know, pressure or, being Jordanian. You're born with, you're good or you can reach this level until proven otherwise, sort of not. Anyway, but there is a cultural element,
yes.
But academia is for sure. But here's another piece of the puzzle, I think, is you want to make sure whatever ecosystem you design will hold resilient and will withstand shockwaves from competing markets, because you don't want capital exodus if a neighboring or a bigger economy simply says, come on over, I'm gonna double, triple.
And that's what's happening. The brain drain in Jordan is absolutely out of this world. It's actually the highest per capita.
So how do you circumvent that? How do you hedge against it? So academia is wonderful in terms of skill sets, in terms of,
But it doesn't stop there, right?
Production.
There's the industry-academia relationships. I mean, you hear about beautiful stories, past and future, in, let's say, Silicon Valley, and how the academia and the academic machine around it actually made it what it is. You look at London, you look at other parts of the world, and you see how academia is far beyond. I mean, the other day I was just inspecting the P&L, or the sort of the sources of revenue or top line for Yale.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how much is the percentage contribution from tuition? 8%. 8%.
Wow.
Okay, juxtapose that to a university here in our region, in Jordan. And that's not an outlier by any stretch of the imagination, because I saw many universities, including here and in Saudi. 91%.
Wow.
So when you look at, it's not, so when you look at Yale, which is 8%, like practically speaking, they can give education for free and not even be like it's a dot.
Yeah.
Like it's a rounding error on their P&L or on their cash flow. Whereas here it's 91%. That means every single individual who registers, if he makes a decision not to, it will have obviously a butterfly effect. So there's something structurally not designed by design, right? At a structural level that needs to be thought well at an educational level. And I think it starts with industry-academia relationships. So all of those brilliant minds that are super energetic, where is their energy channeled back into, while they're in the university, the research, the development, the studies, the power that they're generating? Where's that power? It's like you have an oil mine that the oil field is just going into the water again. How is the industry-academia relationship? And I feel there's a trust issue between both.
It's a very interesting observation, and you're right. I think we lag significantly when it comes to that relationship. Some of the, I don't know if there's enough examples of successful companies joining forces with successful universities.
There is on PR and MOUs.
Yeah. No, seriously. Why is that missing? Why?
Because
I don't want to mention names, but yeah, you don't hear that.
I asked presidents of universities here in the UAE, and all of them have said, "Oh, these companies, they don't understand the way we work." And when I asked company leaders, literally from government or private, CEOs and otherwise, so decision makers, they said, "Oh, those people are too theoretical. They don't understand our way of thinking." So there is a schism. So there's some sort of a divide that is too big, and it has to be someone from above both of them. Again, an ecosystem. Again, something that which is the pipeline I'm talking about. So I think what we're highlighting and pointing at is the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
That they fit and click, but it needs someone to take it and put it next to each other.
Can we study the history of the Yales of this world?
Yes.
And how it got from point A to point B?
So when I quickly looked at obviously the makeup, so there is industry academia relationship. There is obviously the endowments and other elements of the kind of use of capital and fund, because they're the biggest fund of funds, if that makes sense. So there's the bonds, there's all of those elements. But predominantly, I think, in my opinion, and that's my perspective, the onus is on the universities. Because you are, quote unquote, the smarter ones. You should come to the language and the terminologies
I agree.
of the business. Because at the end of the day, the business, like I said, 1 + 1 = 2. If you're able to prove through modeling with objectivity and transparency and integrity that you're able to kind of give them multiples and rewards in a specific span of time, why wouldn't they do it?
Absolutely.
Right.
And particularly private universities, right?
Particularly private, exactly.
Yeah, private, yeah.
But the reason, and I've been speaking, especially recently after my signing with the university in Jordan, I've been speaking to the heads of universities. There's an awareness element. The more I speak to them, the more they're excited, the more they're kind of energetic, the more they come. And now I'm juggling between all of those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
And I don't want to give myself credit, and that's not what I'm after. But every time I speak to them, the one thing that I hear is, this is the first time that we hear these type of discussions. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm not too young, but I'm young enough to say that, no, why didn't it happen 10, 20, 30 years ago?
I'll tell you what, and I'm going to speak freely because I know Jordan and I've operated in Jordan. I sit on the boards and I've managed companies in Jordan. So legacy, lack of awareness, really. What you're saying to you and to me, simple business sense. Look, we've got the Yales of this world. They're able to do it. Why aren't we able to do it? Let's dissect, understand, and fix it.
Yes.
Plain and simple. It's like you're talking completely different. And I think the mindset, the lack of exposure, the limited dimensional aspects of those in charge, they didn't have if even they're seconded or whatever, they're out there on a specific mandate that's pure academia and not so much gets or weaves in the academia with the business from a sustainability, from a cause and delivering. So it takes, unfortunately, someone with your perspective, the fresh blood, to shake things up and say, look at it from this way.
Yeah.
Now, this is the exciting part. To them, to you, this is the opportunity.
Yes.
Now, how do we make sure the opportunity doesn't fall flat?
Exactly. It doesn't gas out, right?
Exactly. As I said, it needs to be almost like a trifecta of things, and saying, okay, now we understand there's the opportunity. We know the path to reaching there or the gaps. And we need to understand that you can't, again, have your cake and eat it too. So I'll give you a simple example. Board representation.
Yes, okay. I've read about you a lot, that I know how it's like deep in your heart, the board construction and board representation. It's really deeply.
I sit on board. Look, a board is a team out there to play a match, and make sure, or a team of coaches, if you like, that wants to ensure that the team of players performs at their best. So if you have one coach sitting on the board seat that doesn't match what is required, it's not as simple as, there's this one, I don't want to say incompetent, but irrelevant, really, representative. It takes effort. It derails the whole conversation, the momentum. It consumes energy.
Yes.
So far beyond 1 out of 7 or 1 out of 5. So let alone, and this is at a corporate or whatever, which is more simpler than what university with a large corporation trying to find marriage. So you want to make sure that, don't tell me, fine, I'll give you X, Y, and Z. And by the way, we need to, because Jordan, his uncle, his father, no compromise.
No compromise.
No compromise.
Conflict of interest has to be an integral part.
Not only conflict, Usama. I'm telling you, even if there's no conflict, if it's, let me use the expression, if it's dead weight, no.
Yes.
That's what I would be adamant about, because dead weight is a liability. It's not an asset. It's as simple as that. It's either an asset or a liability.
Yes. I love that. Coming back to the financial sort of terminologies, the success in everything we talked about, the end result is, are we having investor confidence in a way that can attract capital or not, period. Because capital doesn't lie. I mean, markets, I love, one of the books is Al-Muqaddimah تبع Ibn Khaldun. It says, there is economic prosperity and capital is if we have fairness. And fairness is exactly the opposite of everything you mentioned. Oh, my uncle, my this, my that. It doesn't happen. And therefore, capital is repulsed by it. Capital is attracted by it, in addition to everything else that's done in the most proper way. So if we look at the earlier numbers I mentioned, one number I didn't mention because it's abysmal. You know how much Jordan attracted in VC money in 2024? I didn't see 2025 because I think it wasn't even on the map. $2.2 million. $2.2 million. I mean, let's have that sink in for a second, right? The UAE in 2024, 2025 attracted between $1 to $2 billion, right? Jordan attracted $2.2 million. Now, the quantity of companies that actually were established in Jordan in the same time period is more. It was 6,500 in Jordan versus 5,600, around 5,700 in the UAE. So there is passion, there is talent, there is energy, there is drive.
There's even the Amazons of this world.
Absolutely.
But, okay, more on the call center, sort of, not the intelligence part, not the full potential of what Jordanian resources can do, unfortunately.
And we need to see it through. So, and when I asked capital owners, they clearly said, and from here, they clearly said, we're not confident. We're extremely, extremely confident in the workforce.
Yeah.
We have zero confidence in the ecosystem. They said it's a money siphon. I'm not going to put any, if your company is established or operating in any way, shape or form that it receives capital in Jordan, sorry, I'm out.
Do you know why? It saddens me to say this, because there's been one too many failed attempts, and this straight your credibility,
yes,
or lack thereof. And that's why they said zero confidence. Not if you get me 1, 2, 3, no, zero.
Yes.
Because one too many times, you're just, I don't want to say blacklisted, really. Maybe this is too harsh, but you've lost credibility.
You've lost credibility. And I mean, that's not the end of the road. I mean, you have to work hard now and change the variables and change the kind of everything that you have to pick up. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is scary.
And believe me, that I know, and you probably have sensed it, heard it, know it. There is political willpower. But the key difference is don't bet on individuals.
Yes.
It's not Usama that's going to change, that's going to fly in here.
And it shouldn't.
With a magic. And it's not Usama as a person. It's what Usama is bringing, what he's saying, and what he wants to do.
As a system.
As
an operating system.
Not as an individual.
No, not as an idea.
Exactly. And we still bet on unfortunately, out of desperation, out of, shoot, we've gotten this one too many times. We know that we have zero credibility. We still bet on people because we think it's this guy who's gonna solve the serious problems. While in reality, yes, there are intrinsic problems. You need to scrap and design from scratch, take into account all the lessons learned. I've look on a parallel. There's been so many companies international companies that have came in, invested in Jordan, set up shop, operated, and then exited.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And over and over, we continue to say we want to bring in fresh, new FDIs. Okay. I truly think your best bet for FDIs is current investors, not new investors. Customer acquisition cost is far higher. Yes, go to your existing ones. And part of going to your existing ones is to make sure that those who have exited, exactly why they've exited, what the root cause of the problems, and fix them. Now, having said that, I do understand and I acknowledge the social hurdles, problems you need to cater for or fix in terms of unemployment and so on and so forth.
That solves it, right? Because if you open companies, if you're
indeed,
able to
or to use maybe a more simple example, I have this individual that I need to find a spot for just to
right.
You know what? I'm going to design something to cater for that. Let me design something that won't impede me. That board member that I'm referring to, I'll find a spot. I'll design something superficial or whatever to stroke the ego or whatever, or satisfy or take care of it, but let me do my thing the right way.
Effectively. Right? But let me ask you a few questions at the end. Do you remember a point in time when it clicked to you that leadership is not a title, it's actually an operating system during your career?
There's been so many moments. I don't want to reflect on not a title. Look, there's this moment that always comes back to me. It was post-financial crisis. We had been
2008.
Yeah. So this was
2009, 10.
In 2008, initial reaction, we were at Cityscape here. I was part of the fastest growing company in the region. We had won that award. Very well funded, 225 million USD, 3 years old. We were a rocket out to conquer. We had projects in UAE, we had head office here, Jordan, Russia, and we had businesses Montenegro, Algeria, Tunisia, exploring. Then, financial crisis hit. Initial reaction is like, we're okay. We have solid shareholders. Then you realize this is far bigger and you need to, sales were dropping at an alarming rate. So one thing I did quickly is I did a remedial action that we need to act quickly just to survive. So I had a restructuring plan, presented it, and saying, here's what we need to do. I think there a sense of responsibility fall upon me that I need to save the company. This is no longer a fun upward trajectory. Now it's about saving, salvaging, and so on. From there on, we did well. I mean, we survived for years thereafter when companies were shutting down. So fortunately, things were okay. But the moment I was referring to is, I had to restructure over and over again. And one of the things that I always used to do is every month I would gather everyone and just have the monthly meeting. And no notes, no nothing, of course, talking points, but then I would open it up for questions. And time again, because of things didn't get any better, the size of the attendance kept shrinking and shrinking. It started with jam-packed, and it ended up with just plenty of room to walk around. So one moment is every time and I've said this before, every time, I see the list of people that you're going to have to, again, restructuring. And part of it is the blue collar, if you like, the support or whatever. Yeah. So I always say, no, delay, defer, delay. Let's focus on, people who have better chances of re-employment. Then we got to a point where I had to. So anyway, made the decision, difficult decision. So I walked from one building to the other. And then I saw one of the support, office attendants who was there, and I knew his name was on the list. So I called up the head of HR and said, did you inform these guys? And he said, yes, I did. So, right. I finished my meetings. On the way back, I saw the guy. And I said, can I have a word? And he said, and I told him, forgive us for doing this to you, but trust me, you're going to be in a better place. You're going to land on your feet. And you know what his answer was said? Okay, he said, no, boss, forgive me for this, and forgive me for doing that. And that just brought tears to my eyes. And I went back to my office and I locked the door and I'm like, what am I doing to people? It was a moment where very emotional. Yeah. And that's the heavy weight of leadership. So leadership comes with prestige, spotlights, headlines, interviews,
reserved parking,
media, the works, but also you need
this is where you feel it hits you that it's much more than the title.
It's much far more than the title. It's you're accountable and responsible for the professional lives of people, let alone personal lives and how it affects them. So every word matters, every handshake matters. You need to invest in people and care for people, very much not at the expense of the company, but in tandem with the company.
Okay, so next question. For CEOs and founders of obviously scale-ups and companies that could potentially receive capital, for that CEO, what does capital ready mean, in your opinion? So in a way that will allow capital owners or capital deployers to think of that CEO vis-a-vis that company as ready to have capital deployed in it.
You want the short answer or the long answer?
We're here.
Okay. The short answer. The very same word, ready. So if I'm looking, assessing, evaluating a CEO, I want to make sure that this person is ready. Understand, knows the gaps, knows the opportunity. Of course, usually they know the opportunity and the upside and how to solve for it. But every element has been identified and either already available or in the pipeline of this is how I'm going to approach it. So I want maturity. When I say ready, maturity in terms of game plan, in terms of skill sets, in terms of capabilities, in terms of knowing what he or she can do, but more importantly or equally importantly, what they cannot do. In sharing or acknowledging that, yes, the CEO is the make or break founder, and yes, there are co-founders, but sometimes you need to make difficult decisions. You need to forfeit certain responsibilities or bring in people from the outside, and it may or may not work. So you want that maturity of understanding what this journey truly entails. Because oftentimes we always look at the blue ocean, blue sky scenarios of saying, here's the problem, here's what we've done, our numbers, our multiples, the opportunity, all we need is that capital, and then
my TAM is 20 billion, whatever.
My TAM is 1 billion, and okay, but you know what it really means and entails to execute. So not execute on the underlying solution or the capabilities, but all-inclusive execute.
Acquiring customers, growth, expansion.
Losing customers, losing people, you name it. I mean, if there's one thing I have a heavy database of is risks. Risks that have materialized, managing risks, identifying risks, and so on. And so risks and opportunities, and they go hand in hand. You need to understand, yes, the opportunities come with a set of upside, but also downside. So what would you do in such a scenario?
When that's okay. So, I mean, you've been and you are on multiple, investment committees. What do you think the one thing that people usually forget or ignore when it comes to capital readiness?
They tend to focus on drawing a pretty picture that ICs want to see and hear without the downside part. So again, I've seen presentations, I've seen pitch decks, and that look amazing. But then let's go beyond. Let's drill down on the assumptions. Let's question the assumptions. What if these don't materialize? What if this is how I test the true resilience of the business plan, of the investment proposition. And I've seen it, and I've sent back people, including foreign investors, back to the drawing board and saying, I've shocked them above and beyond even my role, and saying, do you honestly think people are going to give a new company 60% debt against 40% equity? Who are you to think? You don't have track record. So rude awakening. Sometimes you need to shock to make sure that the model itself is, or the value proposition is a better one.
So now they have the capital. Because in our region, IPO is scarce and far and beyond, which is a structural issue that is a different time. What do you advise early startups and scale-ups? Because to your point, attracting capital is a clear path to how can I get my returns? And my returns is through an exit, clearly. What do they have? What options do they have outside of IPO to make sure that at least they study and work? And it's not just a selection, but
strategic. I think one strategic exits is an alternative that's underutilized. So being acquired, being merged, I think that build it in early on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one piece of advice. Another would be to the founders: do not let your ego go out of control. In this part of the world, the early success, the early traction, you're a startup, you get maybe seed, angel, round one. Sometimes it gets to your head, and you're not done. Further stages of downstream exits, monetization for your, VC or for your investors at large, doesn't get easier. It's not as easy as the earlier parts of the journey or the stream. So you need to understand that, and just again, one way to solve for this is to have gray hairs around you.
Yes.
Is to ensure that you have people who don't have a a vested interest other than your and your company's well-being. So I think having an advisory board goes a long ways to ensure that you have not guardrails per se, but you have sounding boards, and you need to have sounding boards, and you need to listen, and you need to be flexible at times to listen to words of wisdom and experience that are there only to help.
You mentioned something about the boards that sometimes you have, whether it's dead weight, dead wood, or something. So as a founder who doesn't have gray hair, obviously they're new, and I've had horror stories from them just going to the quote unquote senior people and forming that board, and that board actually wrecked them. And
Really?
early on took equity from them that actually jeopardized, like literally mortgaged their future. So how do they form a board, and what's the board structure?
Okay. Funny, you remind, I was approached by a founder who has done quite well and wanted me to join the board against equity. And I said no. I didn't want it. I turned it down. For two reasons. One, I thought it would make me conflicted. And two, my return on time metric was not met. So I don't want to even go there. Sometimes you have to pay to get value.
Yes.
Pay today, not pay 10 years down the line.
Yes.
So again, that was for me in this case. But to your question, you want to make sure you have the right people, the right profile on board, and whether it's the disaster that again, it's a team, it's a formula. How do you select? You have to do it right.
They need advisors to form advisors.
No, not really. In my experience, I think word of mouth is one. You have to understand where you're missing, where you don't have gaps. Bring on board people who have credentials. So again, I have a close friend who's a career banker, and that brings tremendous value to the discussion. Again, you have people who have managed companies or sat on board, so you understand the perspective of boards and companies and PEs and okay, let's put aside VCs. So again, you need experience, you need depth in certain disciplines or domains that can only help you. But if you tell me, I'm curious to learn why was it a disaster when people toyed with it or have gone down that route?
When I asked that founder, they didn't know how to measure value. Now, obviously, those people that they spoke to or she spoke to were celebrities in their own domains. They had all the gray hair in the world, 30 plus, 35, 40 years sometimes of really leadership experience at the corporate level, multinational, multi-billion-dollar organizations, that they knew nothing about the startup as an entrepreneurial venture, they didn't know that.
Okay.
And therefore, she got swayed by the numbers of whether it's the followers, whether it's the kind of the status and prestige and profile, and the sector, because it's in the same sector, but it's not directly related to founders' needs at that level. It's like getting a professor to teach a kindergarten.
Okay.
And to add insult to injury, that was against equity that then obviously hurt her in the future because downstream institutional capital did not like that, and they wanted to clean, but it was too expensive because it was too high, and it was like a drama that she said to me, had she gone back, she would never do it again.
Okay. Good you mentioned that, because I don't want to say chemistry, but matchmaking is indeed important. I'm currently mentoring and coaching a wonderful young lady who's a founder, and she's set up her own company.
Mm-hmm.
And she came off when we first started. She said, "Listen, I'm ADHD." And I said, "Okay." And I started to ask questions and listen and understand the business model. And we meet about once a week, once every 2 to 3 weeks. It depends, just, how are you doing? And I'm someone that can provide that guidance. Again, the gray hairs. I don't want to say, keep referring to the gray hairs. I'll tell you what, from my perspective, is important. It's important for me to listen. It's important for me to acknowledge that the founder's persona, that the generation, whatever it is, millennials or X.
Yeah, the gap between you.
There is a gap. I need to accept that. I need to acknowledge that. It's not my way or the highway. It's not my gray hairs, do as I tell you because I have
because you're the source of truth.
Yeah. Because been there, done that. I have 3 years. I've built companies. I've managed companies. You can't do that. You just cannot. It's a dining table. Okay, she comes to the table with a certain set of skills, accomplishments, behaviors, questions, dilemmas, opportunities, which is wonderful. And my role is to make it better, is to push back on certain things, and then, but not to the extent of breaking it. Okay, if I feel strongly about a certain area, I say, I feel strongly about a certain area. It's your show. It's just like being a chairman.
Yeah.
I'm not going to shove down your throat certain things I have a conviction or I believe. No, I'm here to help you, and helping you is entails agreeing, disagreeing, bringing new things, challenging, giving you certain perspective, different perspective, and guiding you to look at
the dialogue.
It's a dialogue, exactly. So perhaps the burden falls more on the advisor, given that the advisor is an advisor, is the more experienced, is the role that renders advice in a variety of concentration or degrees of assertion.
What if she disagrees with you and then she fails because she disagreed with you and didn't take your advice? How would you handle that?
For me, I wouldn't say I told you so. I would never. I would go back and say, how can we learn and build and ensure that this doesn't happen again? Well, I take it back. Not ensure it doesn't happen again, but chances of it happening again are less. So as a minimum, let's just, again, goes back to learn, evolve from this, failure, if you like.
Okay, so outcomes at that level.
Is this too idealistic? Look,
No, learn. I mean, look, to me, it's all about fixed mindset or growth mindset, right? So it's very clear. People keep on asking me, what's a growth mindset? It's like, exactly, you defined it now so articulately, clear. Listen, focus on the learning, period. Not I told you so, not being touched at an ego or a character level. How didn't you listen to me? How didn't you see the gray hair or the 35, 40 years of experience? All of that is relevant, of course, and it's important. And that's why we're having that discussion and that dialogue. But it's not, how they say it, appeal to authority. It's not because I have this or because I have that, therefore I am the source of truth. Things change. And like you said, it's a generational gap that really it's a two-way learning.
Absolutely. Right. And you know what? And even go back to the partnership formula. That's why, look, if I like the company, I'll go in as an investor. I don't want equity in kind, because the equity in kind might adversely influence the way we interact and affect, the objective advice.
Yes.
So there are two separate things. If it's compensation, you know what? Is it or is it not a business expense? If it's a business expense, then you need to acknowledge that it's a business expense, this advice or whatever, or board.
Yes.
Now, then comes in, do you like the company? Do you believe in the company?
Mm-hmm.
This is an investment opportunity, an investment question. Do I like it or not? I'll put up money. You want to give me favorable terms? Great. You want to give me entry at the whatever stage? Great. It's just, we separate. This is governance at its best. This is the beauty of segregating, not, amalgamating.
Yes.
When it makes sense to the betterment of the common
interest in the organization, because it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
But that's a highly, how do I say it? I don't want to say complicated, but it requires a certain level of understanding. Because, I always say this: if you don't understand basic algebra or calculus, and then you try to solve a trigonometry example, so it's or a problem.
True.
So that discussion requires a certain set of skills to be able to even receive, and let alone have a dialogue or understanding. So what do you do if the founder doesn't have that level of understanding?
Look, I agree. That's why just earlier I said the founder, when you said, what do you look for?
Yeah.
I look for the maturity and ability in the founder to listen, to take in constructively different points of view, to be flexible. One of the things historically I shy away from, or not, manage delicately, is stubborn people. Because it requires a lot of energy, and energy is investment, and you need to manage where that investment goes. So stubborn people are it's a trait that
What's the signal that someone is stubborn?
I ask point blank in almost all.
What if someone is not aware
that they're stubborn? Usually, historically in interviews, I said, "Are you stubborn?" And like, well, when you ask point blank, you'd be surprised. A lot of people,
Interesting. I haven't thought of
it. They tell you, but here's the funny part. They say,
I'm not stubborn, but I'm always right.
No. I'm hard to convince. I'm stubborn, but if I'm convinced otherwise, I'll change my mind. I'm like, okay, then what you're telling me is good luck changing my mind.
Exactly. So you could just confront and ask point blank. Yeah. Okay, so I have last question that it always comes to me is that if I have a magic wand and I look at the region as one block of land, one people, right? GCC and Jordan, this kind of one block of land. And you're sitting at a spot where you have a magic wand, and you say, with this magic wand, you will have capital flow in the most objective, rational business sort of a growth way. So the pipeline from VC to PE to kind of massive contribution to the economy happens in the most sustainable and repeatable way. What would you have used that magic wand on?
If I have a magic wand that I want, that's a deep question. Magic wand that I can affect the whole
so
value
just
chain.
Change something exactly because an economy that has idea to start up, to scale up, to exit, to PE, and then contributing to the economy, and then those people and the whole thing can become, because this is, if I zoom 60,000 feet view at an economy, this is how this is why the US is the US. This is why China is China.
Look, it's the answer is unity. I would put unity in the drinking water of the 400 plus, what do we know, 400 million?
Yes.
Unity. I'm a big admirer of success stories. You mentioned the US, of how nations were built. Okay, the US is 50 countries
50 plus,
that came. Europe, Italy used to be several countries, yet they united. Okay, we don't have to unite under political regimes, but we need to unite under the one common thread or DNA. Could be language, could be adjacency, could be
Culture. Yeah.
So I would say, inflict unity in the most pragmatic, non-political way. And others have done it. The scale of, again, US, comparable in terms of population, comparable in terms of diversity.
Yes.
Southern different, and they went through aches and wars and that, but they've established a beautiful model from a governance economy that served. You have the federal, you have the state, you have the county, you have the municipal, and it works beautifully up until recently. But it worked it created a superpower.
Yeah.
But look at the economy.
Exactly. And the way I think of it is, if we have that here, we will add also our basic instinct of morality, community, and most importantly, sense of belonging that we have together. Because the reason why, quote unquote, like you said recently, it's not working, because it's failing, because they do it in the most abstract way, which makes, yes, the economy is good, but then you have the 0.001% are reaping the results, and the rest is not. So
greed. And one more, afterthought or thought on that. I always like to use this example. It's like a big band. You have so many players playing so many different
like
instruments.
A symphony. Yeah,
it's a symphony. Thank you. And you have the conductor. And the minute a note is off beat, whole thing falls apart. So that's how, when you say under the spill of unity, we all need to know our notes. We need to play to the symphony, and anyone, no exceptions, that plays outside, you either shape up or ship out.
I love that. And that's exactly how I think of it. If we don't play together with, going back to your first 2 hours ago, what you said, which is self-interest or the interest of the organization. And by organization, not just an economic organization, the organization, people organizing together to do something. And if someone is clearly, through a pattern of behavior, serving their own best interest or their family's interest, they should be corrected or out.
It's one chance.
Zero tolerance.
Zero tolerance.
Exactly.
No exceptions.
Omar, thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you. My pleasure.